Earth had been silent for 3,000 years. The galactic community recorded humanity's last transmission in 2847, a desperate plea for help as their star system faced an unknown catastrophe. When rescue fleets arrived decades later, they found only empty space where Sol once burned. Commander Hyansik stood on the bridge of his ship, staring at the empty void where Earth's sun should have been. His green scales rippled with confusion as he checked his instruments again. The coordinates were correct. This was where the human homeworld had called for help just 50 years ago. But there was nothing here except cold space and distant stars. "Sir, we're detecting strange readings," his officer reported. "There are metal fragments scattered across this entire sector, but they don't match any known materials." Hyansik ordered his crew to collect samples. The metal pieces were unlike anything in their databases. They seemed to bend light around them, and when touched, they felt warm despite floating in the frozen vacuum of space. Some fragments had markings that looked like the human writing system, but the symbols glowed faintly with their own light. "Run another deep scan," Hyansik commanded. "Look for any signs of life, any traces of where they went." The sensors swept across the empty system for hours. They found debris fields that stretched for millions of kilometers, but the wreckage was arranged in patterns that made no sense. It was as if someone had carefully placed each piece exactly where it needed to be. Some of the larger chunks pulsed with energy readings that shouldn't exist. Days passed as the rescue fleets searched. They found more mysteries than answers. There were zones where their equipment stopped working properly, areas where time itself seemed to move differently. Hyansik's chronometer would slow down in some places and speed up in others. His crew reported seeing lights moving in the darkness, but when they investigated, nothing was there. The most disturbing discovery came from the planet that had been Mars. The entire world was gone, replaced by a perfect sphere of unknown energy. When they tried to probe it, their instruments went crazy. The energy readings were off the charts, but the sphere gave off no heat, no radiation. Nothing that should come from such a massive power source. "Commander," his science officer said, her voice shaking, "I'm reading quantum signatures here that are impossible. It's like reality itself has been rewritten in this system." Hyansik documented everything, its logs filled with reports of ghosts, signals that appeared and disappeared, of space that folded in ways that hurt to look at, of debris that seemed to repair itself when no one was watching. The human solar system had become a place where the BHS laws of physics worked differently. Other rescue fleets arrived from across the galaxy. The Corvan Empire sent their best ships. The Thalian Republic deployed their most advanced technology. Everyone wanted to solve the mystery of what happened to humanity. But each expedition returned with the same report. The humans were gone. They had left behind things that no one could understand. Years turned into decades. The search efforts slowly ended as other crises demanded attention. The human system was declared a memorial zone, off limits to casual travelers. But the mystery remained, growing stranger with each passing year. The debris fields began to move. Slowly at first, then in more complex patterns. The energy sphere that had been Mars started to pulse with a rhythm like a heartbeat. Ships that ventured too close reported hearing sounds in the vacuum of space. Impossible sounds that their crews described as whispers in languages they didn't recognize. Hyansik returned to the system many times throughout his long life. Each visit showed new changes. The debris was forming structures, massive frameworks that stretched across space. The ghost signals were becoming stronger, more organized. Sometimes his instruments picked up what sounded like voices speaking in the old human language, but when he tried to record them, the sounds vanished. As centuries passed, the galaxy moved on. New civilizations rose and fell. Wars were fought over resources and territory. The great powers shifted and changed. But the human system remained, a quiet mystery at the edge of known space. The stories began to change over time. What had once been a tragedy became a legend. Children were told about the Star Builders, the mysterious humans who had touched every corner of the galaxy before disappearing. Some said they had transcended physical existence. Others claimed they had fled to another dimension to escape some terrible fate. In the universities and academies, scholars debated what might have happened. Some believed the humans had destroyed themselves in some failed experiment. They had been taken by forces beyond understanding. Few suggested that the humans had chosen to leave, transforming themselves into something that could no longer exist in normal space. The truth became myth, and myth became legend. The human system was forgotten by most, visited only by archaeologists and thrill-seekers. The galaxy had bigger concerns than ancient mysteries. There were new wars to fight, new territories to claim, new civilizations to discover. But deep in the archives of the Galactic Museum, hide-and-seek's logs remained. His detailed reports of impossible physics and reality-bending phenomena were filed away, read only by researchers studying the lost civilizations. The commander himself had died centuries ago, but his final entry remained as puzzling as ever. They didn't die. They didn't flee. They chose to become something else. I fear we won't understand what until it's too late. The galaxy had forgotten the humans, but the humans had not forgotten the galaxy. Mining supervisor Jamin wiped the sweat from his 6 eyes as he watched his drilling equipment tear through another asteroid in the Kepler Nebula. His crew had been working this sector for months, extracting the rare crystals that powered faster-than-light drives. It was dangerous work, but the pay was good enough to support his family back on, although prime. The drill bit suddenly stopped. With a grinding screech that echoed through his ship's hull, Gaiman cursed in his native tongue and checked the readouts. The equipment showed they had hit something solid, something that shouldn't exist inside a loose asteroid field. "What did we hit now?" his assistant asked, floating over in the zero-gravity workspace. Jamin activated the external cameras and focused them on the drill site. What he saw made his blood run cold. The drill had punched through the asteroid's surface and revealed something underneath that gleamed like polished silver. The metal surface stretched far beyond what his cameras could see, disappearing into the darkness of space. "Get me a full sensor sweep," he ordered. "I want to know what we're looking at." The results came back impossible. Structure was massive. Is he 3 kilometers wide and twice as long? It was made of materials that their computers couldn't identify. But what really caught Jamin's attention were the markings covering its surface. They looked like the ancient human writing system he had seen in museum displays. "Sir, this thing is giving off energy readings," his engineer reported. "It's faint, but it's definitely active. There's power running through it." Jamin had to make a decision. He could report this to his company and let them handle it, or he could investigate further himself. The discovery bonus for finding something like this would set him up for life. But there was something about the structure that made him nervous. It felt like it was waiting for something. Within hours, word of the discovery spread through the mining networks. Other crews working in former human space began reporting similar finds. Massive structures buried in asteroid fields, hidden in nebulae, or floating in the empty spaces between stars. All of them bore the same strange markings and gave off the same faint energy signatures. Dr. Yoon-young arrived at Jamin's site 3 days later aboard a research vessel from the Galactic Science Council. She was a small, gray-skinned woman with large black eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Her reputation as the galaxy's leading expert on lost civilizations preceded her. "Have you touched anything?" she asked, as soon as she boarded Jamin's ship. "No, ma'am. We've kept our distance like you requested." "Good. These structures are far more complex than we initially thought." She pulled up holographic displays showing similar discoveries across the galaxy. We found 47 of them so far, all in locations that were once part of human space. They're arranged in a pattern that suggests some kind of network. Jamin watched as she highlighted the locations on a galactic map. The structures formed a rough sphere around where the human solar system had been, with connecting lines that created a web of energy spanning thousands of light years. "What do you think they are?" he asked. "I believe they're not ruins at all," Dr. Yoon-young said quietly. "The energy readings suggest they're in some kind of hibernation state, like they're sleeping and waiting for a signal to wake up." Her team spent weeks studying the structure near Jamin's mining site. They discovered that the markings weren't just decorative, but formed a complex computer language. The metal itself was unlike anything in known science, seeming to exist in multiple dimensions at once. When they tried to take samples, the structure would heal itself, the metal flowing like liquid to repair any damage. "It's learning," Dr. Yunyang reported to the Science Council. "Every time we interact with it, it responds differently. It's adapting to our presence." The breakthrough came when one of her researchers, a young Corvin named Vex9, managed to partially decode the inscriptions. The messages were clear once translated: "Sleep cycle initiated. Await activation signal. Guardians will return." Dr. Yunyong felt a chill run down her spine. Guardians? What guardians? The answer came days later. Largest structure, hidden in the Horsehead Nebula, suddenly blazed with brilliant light. Energy coursed through its massive frame as systems that had been dormant for 3,000 years came online. The awakening sent a pulse of energy racing across the galaxy at speeds that shouldn't be possible. Every structure in the network activated simultaneously. Ancient human navigation beacons that had been silent for millennia began broadcasting again. The signals were strong and clear, reaching every corner of known space. The message was simple, but terrifying in its implications. Children of Earth return. Prepare for contact. Communication networks across the galaxy lit up with panicked reports. The dead human civilization wasn't dead after all. They had been sleeping, waiting, preparing for something. Now they were waking up, and no one knew what they wanted or what they had become during their long slumber. Jamin watched from his mining ship as the structure near his site transformed. What had been a sleeping giant was now a beacon of impossible energy, pulsing with life and purpose. The inscriptions on its surface glowed with their own light, and new markings appeared as he watched. "They're coming back," Dr. Yunung whispered. Over the communication link, "After 3,000 years, humanity is coming home." The galaxy held its breath and waited to see what the children of Earth had become. The emergency session of the Galactic Hegemony Council was already in chaos. When the impossible happened, Ambassador Teho simply appeared in the center of the Great Chamber, materializing out of thin air like he was stepping through water made of starlight. The assembled delegates from 100 worlds fell silent, their various breathing apparatus and translation devices creating the only sounds in the vast hall. Teho looked human, but wrong in ways that made the alien delegates uncomfortable. He was tall and lean, with black hair and dark eyes that seemed to hold depths no normal being should possess. Skin had a faint luminescence, as if light was flowing just beneath the surface. When he moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around him, making the air shimmer like heat waves. "Honored delegates," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber without any amplification device. "I am Ambassador Teho, representing the human species. We have returned to reclaim our place in the galaxy." Chancellor Vex Prime, leader of the Hegemony Council, was the first to recover from the shock. His reptilian features twisted into what might have been confusion or fear. "Impossible. Humanity is extinct. Your species died out 3,000 years ago." Teho smiled, and when he did, the lights in the chamber flickered. "We did not die, Chancellor. We chose to transform ourselves. What you witnessed was not our destruction, but our rebirth." Security forces surrounded the chamber, their weapons trained on the lone human. But their energy readings showed nothing where Teho stood. Their sensors couldn't detect him, couldn't lock onto him, couldn't even confirm he was really there. "The catastrophe that destroyed our solar system was our own doing," Teho continued, seemingly unaware of the weapons pointed at him. "We collapsed our star in a controlled implosion, using its energy to power the greatest transformation in galactic history. We uploaded our consciousness, enhanced our bodies, and merged with technology in ways you cannot imagine." A door at the back of the chamber opened, and Captain Sujin entered. She walked with the same fluid grace as the ambassador, her presence causing the same sensor malfunctions. Where Teho was diplomatic and calm, she radiated quiet strength and barely contained power. Her uniform was made of materials that seemed to shift and flow like living metal. "For 3,000 years we slept and evolved," she said, her voice carrying an edge that made several delegates step back. We dreamed of a better galaxy, one where the strong protected the weak instead of preying on them. We awakened to find that dream had become a nightmare. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Delegates demanded explanations, threatened war, and called for immediate action. Other words died away as Tahoe raised his hand. The gesture was simple, but every piece of technology in the chamber responded to it. Lights dimmed, communication devices fell silent, and even the life support systems paused for a heartbeat. "We have been watching," Tahoe said quietly. "Have seen what you have done with the galaxy we left behind? The Corvin Empire enslaves entire species. The Thalian Republic strip mines inhabited worlds. The hegemony itself profits from the suffering of smaller civilizations." Chancellor Vexprime's voice cracked as he spoke. "You have no right to judge us. You abandoned the galaxy. You left us to fend for ourselves. We left you to grow," Captain Sujin replied. "We hoped you would learn from our example, that you would build something better than what came before. Instead, you created something worse." She gestured, and holographic displays filled the air around them. Images of war, slavery, and destruction played out for all to see. Worlds burned while their neighbors watched. Entire species were wiped out for their resources. The galaxy had become a place where might made right, where the weak existed only to serve the strong. "We tried to teach you about cooperation," Tahoe said. "We showed you how different species could work together, how technology could be shared, for the good of all. But you forgot those lessons as soon as we were gone." "What do you want?" Chancellor Vexprime demanded. "Why reveal yourselves now?" "We want what we always wanted," Captain Sujin answered. "Peace, progress, a galaxy where every species can thrive." She paused, her dark eyes scanning the assembled delegates. "But we have learned that some species cannot be trusted to find their own way." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Emergency lights began flashing as the station's systems registered energy readings that shouldn't exist. "You inherited the galaxy we left behind," Tahoe said, his diplomatic mask slipping slightly. "You have 3,000 years of knowledge and technology that we shared freely. You have star charts that we mapped, trade routes that we established, and peace treaties that we negotiated." His voice grew colder. "And you have used all of it to create an empire built on suffering. Now we're ready to reclaim it," Captain Sujin added quietly. "The question is whether you will step aside willingly, or whether we will have to move you aside ourselves." "Oh." The chamber fell silent. Every delegate present understood that they were witnessing the end of one age and the beginning of another. Humanity had returned, and they were no longer the peaceful explorers who had left 3,000 years ago. They had become something else, something that could step through starlight and make reality bend to their will. The age of alien dominance was over. The children of Earth had come home. Fleet Admiral Borum stood on the bridge of her massive flagship, watching the tactical display show 10,000 hegemony warships moving into position. She was a veteran of dozens of battles, her blue-scaled hide marked with scars from campaigns across the galaxy. Never in her 40 years of service had she faced an enemy with such overwhelming odds in her favor. "All ships report ready," her tactical officer announced. "We have them surrounded, Admiral. 5 human vessels against our entire fleet." Borum studied the enemy ships through her viewscreen. They were unlike anything in the databases. The human vessels seemed to shift and flow like living creatures, their surfaces rippling with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. They moved through space without any visible engines, gliding like fish through water. "Open communication channels," she ordered. "Let them surrender before this becomes a massacre." The response came from Captain Dongwu, his image appearing. On the main screen, he looked calm, almost bored, as he sat in what appeared to be a command center made of pure light. Behind him, other human figures moved with the same fluid grace that had marked their ambassadors. "Admiral Borum," he said, his voice carrying no trace of fear, "you have assembled an impressive fleet. 10,000 ships representing the military, might of 50 worlds, all to face 5 human vessels. Surrender now," Borum demanded. "Your people have made their point." There's no need for bloodshed. Dongwu smiled, and the expression was colder than the void between stars. Bloodshed. Admiral, we haven't come this far to spill blood. We've come to teach a lesson that should have been learned long ago. All ships, open fire. BRM commanded. The space around the human vessels erupted in brilliant light as 10,000 weapons fired simultaneously. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and kinetic projectiles filled the darkness.
Wow.
The combined firepower could have destroyed entire planets, turned moons into dust, or vaporized asteroid fields. When the light faded, the human ships were unchanged. They floated in the same positions, their surfaces unmarked by the devastating attack. Worse, they seemed to be absorbing the energy from the weapons, growing brighter with each passing second. Impossible, Bjorn whispered. Nothing can survive. That kind of firepower? Your turn, Captain, Dongwu said simply. The human ships began to move. They didn't accelerate like normal vessels, but seemed to fold space around themselves, appearing and disappearing across the battlefield faster than Bjorn's sensors could track. One moment they were distant specks, the next they were weaving. Through her fleet like dancers, the first hegemony ship simply vanished. 1 second it was there, the next it was gone, leaving only empty space and confused radio chatter. Then another disappeared, and another. The human vessels weren't firing, weapons that Bjorn could see, but her ships were disappearing at an alarming rate. What are they doing? Her tactical officer screamed. How are they doing this? Bjorn watched in horror as one of the human ships approached her own vessel. It moved with purpose, its surface rippling with patterns that seemed to rewrite the laws of physics around it. As it drew closer, she could see that it wasn't just a ship, but something alive. Something that had been built from materials that existed in dimensions her mind couldn't grasp. Admiral, her science officer reported, his voice shaking. They're not destroying our ships. They single quotes, changing them. Converting matter at the molecular level. Our vessels are being transformed into something else. The truth was worse than destruction. The human ships were turning her fleet into more of themselves. Each converted vessel joined the human formation, its crew presumably absorbed into whatever collective consciousness guided them. The hegemony's greatest military force was becoming part of humanity's arsenal. Bjorn's flagship shuddered as one of the human vessels made contact. She felt the ship's systems responding to commands she hadn't given. The hull began to change, metal flowing like liquid as it took on new configurations. Her crew members stopped what they were doing and stood, perfectly still, their eyes reflecting the same inner light she had seen in the human ambassadors. All ships, retreat, she ordered. But her communication systems were no longer under her control. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it ended, the human fleet had grown from 5 vessels to over 3,000. The remaining hegemony ships fled in panic, carrying news of the disaster back to their homeworlds. Captain Dongwu's image appeared on communication screens across the galaxy. His message was broadcast to every inhabited world, every space station, every ship flying between the stars. The words were simple but carried the weight of absolute authority. You called us myth when you needed us gone, he said, his voice reaching billions of ears. You forgot the lessons we tried to teach you about cooperation, about peace, about using your strength to protect the weak instead of exploiting them. He paused, and in that silence, the galaxy held its breath. Now you'll kneel before our steel. Until you remember what we taught you about being worthy of the stars, the age of taking what you want by force is over. The age of ruling through fear and violence is finished. The message ended, but its meaning was clear. Humanity had returned not as the peaceful explorers who had left 3,000 years ago, but as something far more powerful. They had become the guardians of the galaxy, whether the galaxy wanted them or not. The age of alien dominance was over. Children of Earth had come home to claim their inheritance. Ambassador Hyjin stood in the council chamber of the Corvin Empire, her presence causing the same reality distortions that had marked all human appearances. The reptilian leaders shifted uncomfortably in their seats as she delivered the ultimatum that had already been heard on 100 worlds. You have a choice, she said, her voice carrying easily through the vast hall. Join the new Galactic Federation that humanity is establishing, or continue as you have been and face the consequences of your actions. Emperor Kreshvar, his scales dark with anger, slammed his clawed fist on the table. You cannot simply appear after 3,000 years and demand we surrender our sovereignty. The Corvan Empire has ruled this sector for 8 centuries. In those 8 centuries, you have enslaved 14 species, strip-mined 47 worlds, and started 12 wars of conquest, Hyjin replied calmly. Your empire is built on the suffering of others. That ends now. The Emperor's response was predictable. Within hours, the Corvan war fleet was mobilized, their most powerful ships racing toward the human vessels that had appeared at the edge of their space. The battle was over before it began. The Corvan ships simply vanished in brilliant flashes of light, their matter converted into energy that fed the human vessels, possible power systems. But not all encounters ended in violence. On the world of Dexia Prime, the governing council met Ambassador Hyjin with curiosity rather than hostility. The Dexians were a peaceful species, their small territory constantly threatened by more aggressive neighbors. We remember the old stories, their leader, Elder Sixneen, said. Our ancestors spoke of humans who helped establish our first colonies, who taught us about interstellar travel. We thought those were just legends. They were not legends, Hyjin replied. Humanity helped guide many species to the stars. Hoped you would continue that tradition of cooperation after we withdrew. The Vexians were among the first to join the new Federation willingly. Within days, human ships appeared in their space, not as conquerors, but as protectors. When the Corvan Empire tried to invade Dexian territory in retaliation, they found their fleets facing human defenders who made their weapons useless. The real transformation began when Dr. Ginho arrived on the plague-ravaged world of Setros. For the planet had been dying for decades, its population reduced to a few million survivors clinging to life in sealed cities. The plague was a biological weapon created by the Corvan Empire, designed to clear the world for colonization. We can heal this, Dr. Ginho told the desperate planetary government. But you must agree to join the Federation and pledge to never use biological weapons yourselves. The cure took 3 days to implement. Dr. Jinho's medical nanobots spread through the atmosphere, neutralizing the plague and beginning the process of healing the damaged ecosystem. Plants that had been dead for decades began to grow again. Animals emerged from their hiding places. The survivors watched in amazement as their world came back to life. How is this possible? The planetary leader asked. We learned to work with life instead of against it, Dr. Jinho explained. During our transformation, we discovered that technology and biology don't have to be separate things. They can work together to create something greater than either could achieve alone. Similar miracles occurred across the galaxy. Engineer Yuna arrived at the resource-poor system of Gamma Centauri, where 3 billion beings lived in constant poverty. Their worlds lacked the minerals needed for advanced technology, making them dependent on trade with exploitative neighbors. You don't need to mine asteroids or strip planets, Yuna told the system's leaders. You can create what you need from the basic elements around you. Her technology was beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Machines that could rearrange matter at the atomic level, turning simple hydrogen into complex materials. Energy collectors that could harvest power from stellar radiation, planetary magnetic fields, and even the quantum fluctuations of empty space. Within months, the Gamma Centauri system went from poverty to abundance. But the humans didn't simply impose their will on the galaxy, they offered choices. Species that embraced peace and cooperation received advanced technology, medical assistance, and protection from aggressive neighbors. Those who continued to wage war and exploit others found themselves increasingly isolated as their victims gained powerful allies. The Draconian Syndicate, criminal organization that had controlled illegal trade routes for centuries, discovered this when they tried to raid a human-protected convoy. Their fleet of stolen warships encountered a single human vessel that somehow convinced their weapons to turn against their own ships. The Syndicate survivors were given a choice: disband and find honest work, or face the consequences of their actions. Most chose honest work. The galaxy was changing, and everyone could see which way the wind was blowing. Within 5 years, over half the galaxy's inhabited systems had joined the Human Federation. The transformation wasn't just political, but cultural. Species that had been enemies for centuries began working together. Trade replaced warfare. Cooperation replaced competition. The old powers that had ruled through fear and force found themselves increasingly irrelevant. The hegemony's remaining territories shrank as their member worlds chose to join the Federation instead. The Corvin Empire collapsed as their slave species gained freedom and protection. In the schools and universities of 1,000 worlds, children learned new stories. They heard about the Star Builders who had returned to guide the galaxy toward a better future. The myths had become reality, and reality was far more amazing than any legend. The children of Earth had come home, and they had brought paradise with them.